On this episode, we're talking about a mother who made a 911 call to report that her son had stopped breathing. But when authorities came and investigated the scene, they saw that there was much more to the story than the mother told them. Let's get into the case of Giovanni Chulo Jennings. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to Love and Murder, your midweek mini episode. I'm your host, Kai, and if you're new here, go ahead and listen to this episode, and if you like it, please don't hesitate to subscribe so you don't miss any more episodes. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much for supporting Love and Murder. Before we begin, I want to say that this episode and all my episodes are sponsored by my lambs and Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. If you want to be a supporter of Lamb, then head on over to our Patreon. However, I know y'all came here for the case, so let's get into this midweek mini. On July 30th, 2024, at approximately 2:34 p.m., 25-year-old Elena Rose Jennings made a 911 call from her house in Madison Heights, Michigan. She called to report that her 6-year-old son, Giovanni Jennings, who they called Chulo, had stopped breathing. The Madison Heights Fire Department and Police Department quickly responded to the scene. When they arrived, first responders found Chulo unresponsive with signs of severe physical trauma. The severity of the boy's condition was apparent, meaning he needed immediate medical attention. To all who responded to the site, when they looked over the boy, they didn't think that this was a one-time incident. To them, the injuries they saw, this indicated a pattern of abuse. Chulo was rushed to Ascension McCobe Oakland Hospital for immediate medical attention, but his injuries were so severe that he needed specialized pediatric care, so they had to transfer him to the Children's Hospital of Michigan, Stilson's Specialty Center in Detroit. Despite the medical team's best efforts, because they put their all into it, Chulo died because of his injuries. He was pronounced dead at midnight on July 31st, 2024, which was less than 24 hours after the 911 call came in. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to his abdomen, resulted in a perforated bowel. He's 6 years old. Oh, this is going to be a hard one. All right. The body was sent off for autopsy, and in the medical examiner's report, it revealed that Chulo had endured, quote, a lengthy period of confinement and abuse. The report also showed prolonged mistreatment, including signs of starvation, beating, and other forms of physical abuse. And I guess I should put in a warning right now. I really believe this one is going to be a hard one to take in, so warning. Graphic details ahead. Elena initially told the police that she had left her son with his biological father while she went to work. And when she gave him to the father, the boy was uninjured. So she's like, I don't know what happened over there. So the Madison Heights Police Department found Chulo's father and questioned him, only to discover that he had an alibi and he was nowhere near his son at the time. So police regrouped and started speaking to people who they knew were around the boy, which he spoke to one of the boy's brothers. His 4-year-old brother told police that Chulo had constantly been hit by his mother and by her boyfriend, 32-year-old Daniel Giacchina. Chulo's 4-year-old brother quoted as saying, quote, Chulo died all day and Danny was there. Right out of the mouth of babes, you were trying to blame this on somebody else, you piece of trash woman. So now police are turning their attention to Elena and Daniel. The truth that they uncovered was that Elena left for work that morning on July 30th, and she had actually left Chulo with Daniel, which she often did. She often left him with Daniel while she went away to work. And it wasn't just him, it was his other siblings. It doesn't say how many, I just know they talked to the 4-year-old and it says siblings, so it's multiple children. So Daniel is watching all of these children. While police are talking to Elena, she said that Daniel had punched Chulo in the abdomen several times, approximately 3 days before he died. This is what caused this little boy's intestines to rupture. So after this grown behind man was punching a 6-year-old in the stomach, he started vomiting and his condition steadily worsened. So his mother saw this dude punch. Ooh, these are the type of people that I just need you to let me in a boxing ring with them. Let me go over their case, and then let me in a boxing ring with them, bare knuckle. And after I do the case online, we'll do a live feed video, and I will just take out everything that I feel from this case on them. I don't know. Too violent? So I was saying this woman let this dude punch on her 6-year-old son, and then he vomited, and she was like, okay, well, he threw up. But then his condition continuously worsened over the course of 3 days. So she let this little boy sit in unimaginable pain for 3 days until he stopped breathing. And then she got scared. That's when she got scared. Ooh, the anger that I feel right now. She said she chose not to take him to the hospital, even though that she knew he needed to go to the hospital, because she feared that a medical examination would reveal the ongoing abuse. You know how to prevent this from happening? Don't abuse your frickin' children. That's it. If you feel like for some reason you don't like this particular child, because this is the only child she abused or she allowed this guy to abuse, that's not his father. If you don't like this particular child for whatever freaking reason, you freaking monster, you could have just given that child to his father, given it to your mom, his father's mom, or even you could have dropped it off at a firehouse without being charged, or a hospital. But no, you decided this one child you were going to abuse and then let slowly die. Oh, okay. I'm trying to be professional. I'm so sorry. Let's get back to the episode. Okay. Whew. Okay. While investigators are continuing, they found text messages between Elena and Daniel that really disturbed even the police. Basically, the text messages were showing evidence of them laughing at the abuse. For instance, there's this one text where Daniel texts Elena that he had, quote, solved the problem of keeping Chulo in the corner by stapling the child's clothes to the wall, even sending a photo to his mother while she was at work. Basically, he was being punished, and I'm using that word loosely, because he looked out of the window. All he did was looked out of the window, and these people stapled him to the frickin' wall. And that's not the worst of it. His place in the house was a pen, a confinement pen, located in his mother and his stepfather's bedroom. I can't even say stepfather because that's just her boyfriend, but located in his mother and her boyfriend's bedroom. And this makeshift prison measured only 3 feet long by 11 inches wide. Remember, this is a 6-year-old, 3 feet long by 11 inches wide. And for those who are not in the U.S., that's 0.914 meters long by 27.94 centimeters wide. So that's how big that was. Then they forced him to sleep in that little pen on a wooden slat, just some wood, measuring 11 inches by 36 inches, or 27.94 centimeters by 0.9144 meters. This is where he lived. This is where he slept. And on top of that, they installed a security camera to monitor his every move. And then they would punish him for what they deemed as misbehaving. For instance, trying to get a drink, peeing because they didn't take him to the bathroom, or even just trying to get out of his little cage. Police gathered through the text messages that they actually enjoyed watching this camera footage of Chulo attempting to escape his pen, and they called this pen in the house, they called it, quote, the corner, and they just loved to watch him try to escape it. It was their form of TV. He also got no sunlight because they had wrapped his the corner, let me put it that way. They had wrapped his corner in blackout curtains. Trying to compose myself. Now, the abuse extended beyond the confinement. He actually endured regular beatings, often in the presence of his younger siblings. So they forced these children to watch, which is abuse on the younger children themselves. People don't realize that, but just because you're not hitting on the younger children, for them to see their older siblings suffer abuse, that fricks them up too. That is a form of abuse on themselves. They feel helpless. It's, blah. Now, it was usually Daniel who carried out the physical assaults. So you just let this dude beat on your frickin' child. But Elena, like I said, was aware of it, and at times she even encouraged it. So I hadn't read off to you the entire autopsy report, but let's go through the rest of it. The autopsy revealed that there was bruising and laceration across Chulo's entire body, including his scalp, his temples, his lips, his inner mouth, his cheeks, his forehead, his chin, his shoulders, his forearms, his fingers, thumbs, back, butt, inner thighs, knees, and shins. So literally every inch of his body. They also found that there were like little BB gun marks on him. And when police did speak with his siblings, they said, yeah, Daniel would shoot at the little boy in the butt with these BB guns. And he actually like forced the younger siblings to do it too, saying that it was fun. Here, take this gun, shoot. I'll teach you to shoot. You aim. And they're doing this to Chulo. And Daniel is forcing them to do this to Chulo. Or he's bored and he's doing this to Chulo himself. And his stupid ass mama, Elena, is allowing this to happen. So police searched the trailer where the couple lived with their 3 children. And they found a staple gun, a BB gun, a 9mm ghost gun. I don't know what that is. What is a ghost gun? Can somebody tell me in the comments below? And bullet holes in the walls were discovered by the police. They also found pictures in the house showing the youngest 2 children playing with a gun and pointing it at Chulo as the stepfather looked on. I guess he was like proudly looking on. So, well, yeah, you could point this at him. I don't know. So, of course, Elena and Daniel were arrested and beaten no, they weren't beaten. My imagination just goes off sometimes. But they were arrested and taken into custody. Police did their job, because if they had beaten them, it would have turned it into something else, and then they wouldn't have been charged. This is why Kai can't be a cop. So initially, they faced charges of lying to a police officer, which is a 2-year felony. Additionally, Daniel was charged with felony weapon offenses, including firearm possession by a prohibited person, ammunition possession by a felon, and felony firearm, meaning that he was already a felon. And she just had a felon in her house abusing her children. Well, she thought it was funny too. Some people just don't need to be parents. And I bet you she felt that, holding on to her man was more important than holding on to this child. Anyways, later on, the charges of first-degree murder and child abuse were tacked on. Both adults have been denied bail and are being held at the Oakland County Jail. And they were supposed to have a probable cause hearing on August 21st, but I haven't seen anything about it. Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald has vowed to, quote, hold the people responsible for this death accountable and to seek punishment that reflects the horror of his death. This child and his siblings suffered unimaginable abuse and lived in fear every day, end quote. If convicted, Elena and Daniel could get life in prison. Look, they need to wear shirts that are embroidered with child abuser, and on the back it tells exactly what they did, so that other inmates can be freaking aware of what they did, and they can suffer the same unimaginable abuse as they inflicted upon this child. But that is just my opinion. That is not reality. All children have a right to grow up in a home free of fear. This was said by Prosecutor McDonald. And I freaking agree. If you're going to have children, why are you abusing them? If you feel like you cannot have children, do not have children. If for some reason you still have a child, but you feel like you're going to abuse this child, put the child up for adoption. You can give it to a grandparent. You can give it to a cousin. You can give it to a sibling. You can drop it off at a firehouse or at the hospital, and you will not be charged or get in any trouble for that. If you're worried about what people might say, because I know some of these people are just narcissists like that. They're more worried about what people might think of them rather than the child's welfare. So if you're worried about what people might say, There's no fear. If you drop it off at the firehouse or if you drop it off at the hospital, it is anonymous. Nobody's going to hear about it. Nobody's going to think less of you. Nobody. But if you let the child die, or if you abuse the child, and everybody's going to think you're a piece of shit person, and exactly what you're not looking to happen is going to happen. Everybody's going to judge you. And somebody like me will judge you live on air to the thousands of people that listen to this podcast. So that's what you're going to end up getting. So you narcissist bastard, which one is better for you? All right, I'm getting off my high horse. That has been your midweek mini. I know some of y'all got just as angry as I did. I hope with my rant, I got your anger out. So we were angry together. We were angry for this child since nobody else in that house was angry for this child. But I know Prosecutor McDonald will do us right and do right by that 6-year-old little boy. And I really hope that his siblings are getting help and are in a very safe place. I really hope they're going to counseling and getting help. And I feel bad for all the children involved. And I don't feel bad for Elena and Daniel. And I really hope they get what they deserve while they're in prison. And that is all I have for you on this midweek mini. What do you think about that episode? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You already know my thoughts. I am highly angry. And sorry, you hear my ice moving around. That's my water. I drink a lot of water. And let's get into your comments. In the last episode of Jane Rudd, that was a case of domestic abuse counselor who was arrested for domestic abuse. I did ask you, do you think Jade Rudd's sentence was appropriate or should she have been placed in a mental health facility? And I gave the options of prison or mental health, and it came back 100% she should have been in prison. And Christina Bobo said, oh my God, if this were the other way around, he would have been under the jail. More light needs to shine on men suffering in DV relationships. It makes me wonder her psychology behind cases she handled, because how can she counsel others when she's a perpetrator? Which I do agree, I didn't even think about that in that aspect. How did she handle cases if she's doing the same thing? And she may have said that instead of reviewing the cases properly, she may have said just blanket statement the woman was the abused, instead of saying, let's look at the evidence and see who's the abuser and who's the abusee. Because, the reason I'm saying this is because she was the one abusing her husband. And she didn't want anybody to find out. But then again, in her instance, from what I remember, she had mental health issues. So she shouldn't have been a counselor in the first place. Unless she was stable on her medicine and doing therapy. Then yes, she could have. But if she's actually actively going through a mental health state, then she shouldn't have been a counselor in the first place. And also I did answer Christina Bobo by saying I do make sure that I do a healthy balance of DV cases involving men being the victim as well as women, because most people seem to solely focus on women and a lot of men suffer immensely due to this. And when they do report the DV, they're often ridiculed by saying, oh, you couldn't take her. All you had to do is push her out the way. All you had to, they're not taken seriously. And I had a whole case on a male in a DV situation where he couldn't get out of his situation. And his DV was getting to the point of almost dying. And I will post that episode in the show notes below. If you missed that episode, if you're new here and you missed that episode, I will post that episode in the show notes below so you can go ahead and listen to it. And he actually gave advice on how to deal with people, as an outside person, how to deal with people is in a DV situation. And that is all I have for you today. Go ahead and leave me a comment about your thoughts on this episode in the show notes below so that I can read it on another midweek mini episode. And now I'm going to go and rest my mind because, these people piss me off. Don't forget that a free way you can help Love and Murder is by simply sharing this episode. We do have a saying here that you share this episode with everyone you know and everyone you don't. And I'll talk about one day where that came from, but in the meantime, share this episode in your text messages with your friend or WhatsApp or whatever. and also share it on your social media. If you want to help Love and Murder monetarily, then go ahead and join our Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. You could also buy me an apple juice. I know people say buy me a coffee, but you could also buy me an apple juice. That link is in the show notes below. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.